So I got COVID about 3.5 months ago now. I've been diagnosed with long COVID. It tends to sway back and forth with how I feel quite a bit, and especially recently I've had a relapse in symptoms where I've suddenly felt like I'm back to square one again. Because some days it does feel like I'm getting better as opposed to getting worse. I wanted to start kind of documenting my recovery so that even if the change is happening very slowly, I can look back and hopefully see some kind of progression, because it's really unpleasant when you don't know when you'll be better and if this is going to stick around permanently. I also partly just want to share my experience. I don't think that long COVID is something that is being talked about enough. I joined a long COVID support group on Facebook, which has been really helpful. But although I know it's something that's affecting a lot of people, it's not something that is affecting people in my immediate circle. That's really difficult when people don't understand what you're going through, and a lot of my friends got COVID at the same time as me and are now running 5-10k in their spare time. Previous to COVID, I was pretty athletic. Just finished 3 years at drama school, which was super physical, and I do a lot of dance, and that's been something that really through the lockdowns we've had so far has been keeping me sane. But one of the big symptoms that I'm having is fatigue, which is made a lot worse with even minimal exercise. So that's something that I'm really struggling with, and it's difficult when you can see everyone else that you know that's had it seemingly bouncing back and not understanding why your body isn't capable of doing that. When I got COVID initially, I had pretty much every symptom that you will have heard of, apart from I kept my sense of taste and smell, which I was really grateful for because it meant that I could eat and enjoy it. But I had nausea, fever, chills, really bad fatigue, migraines, really nasty migraines. I had a really weird symptom where when I got in the shower, the feeling of the water touching my skin would feel absolutely horrible and make me feel like I was going to faint. I couldn't shower without needing to sit on the bathroom floor afterwards for about 10 minutes. It's basically kind of all of the standard symptoms that you hear about. And my kind of 2-week isolation period finished, and I still felt really ill. So I called Test and Trace, and they said that I needed to just keep isolating until I felt better. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I've been in bed pretty much the whole month, but start to gradually feel a little bit better. One thing that I did notice when I finally left the house was anytime I got an Uber or a bus anywhere, I suddenly had really bad car sickness. I had car sickness as a kid, pretty badly, but it stopped. I hadn't had anything like that for years and years, and then suddenly, post-COVID, I get car sick again, which is really weird, but whatever. I also noticed I could not exercise without feeling super ill afterwards. I'd sometimes wake up and feel completely normal and think, oh great, okay, I've recovered. And then because I was feeling better, I would do a little bit of exercise and it would feel fine whilst I was doing it. It sort of tricks you into thinking that you're recovered when you're not. But then the next day, after I'd done the exercise, I would not be able to get out of bed for 2 days. Another thing that would happen would be if I exerted myself too much, I'd get a really bad migraine straight afterwards. Never had migraines before having COVID. I'd just get headaches occasionally, but nothing like this. I should probably say I briefly went into hospital when I had COVID initially, because I've had issues with my lungs before, kind of irritation and stuff like that. They did want to check out my lungs and make sure that I didn't have a pneumonia, which fortunately I didn't. Over the course of these 3 months, I gradually started getting better. Exercise was still not a good idea. I could actually drink alcohol and feel okay before I could exercise again. Sort of started introducing alcohol back into my diet after maybe like 2 months of not drinking at all, and was feeling kind of okay with that. My body felt like I get tired easily, but the migraines got less and less. As I'd say by the end of 3 months, I just started to do a tiny bit of exercise again, and felt okay with that. Would get tired way easier than I did before. I mean, everything that you can do physically before COVID, if you end up being a long hauler, goes out of the window, which can be really frustrating if you're not a particularly patient person, which I'm not, because you just want to be at the standard that you're at before, and suddenly all of your kind of physical capability is taken away from you, which is really hard. Anyway, so I was getting back to being able to exercise, and then I actually got a UTI, which, I mean, I tend to get them quite a lot anyway, but I think because I got this in a time, this is kind of me guessing, but I don't think it's a coincidence that I had this relapse right after I got UTI. I think it must have knocked my immune system or something, and I was on antibiotics for a little while and I started feeling really COVID-y again. But I thought it's probably just side effects of the antibiotics. Fast forward and I stopped taking the antibiotics and my UTI is gone and all of these symptoms stay. I actually felt exactly the same as I felt when I got COVID initially. So I was thinking, okay, so I've got COVID again. And I was researching, is it possible to get COVID 2 times in the space of 3.5 months? And it seems like you can, but it's very, very, very rare. So I went to go and get a test and it came back negative. So I was like, okay, so I feel exactly like I've got COVID, apart from the fever. The fever didn't come back. And I kind of knew that I was a long hauler anyway, really, at that point, because exercise and stuff like that was just so difficult still, but I thought I was really improving. And this one UTI sent me back to square one. It felt like I was 3 months previous all over again. I think the part that I'm finding the hardest is the lack of knowing if you're going to get better. There is a lot of people saying that they're feeling 90% recovered after a year or whatever, but particularly when doing things with your body and like exercising and stuff means so much to you. Like I'm an actor, and being able to be physically fit is a big part of that. I think my biggest fear about it is that because there's a lot of symptoms of long COVID are very similar to chronic fatigue syndrome, which there's no cure for and can last a person's whole life and be completely debilitating. So I get really worried thinking about if long COVID is just another form of chronic fatigue syndrome and it might be permanent. It's just not nice feeling old when you're like, I'm 22 and I've gone from feeling really physically fit, being a healthy 22-year-old. I didn't have any health conditions before this, and I really didn't think that COVID would affect me that badly. That's also partially why I get bothered by people not taking COVID seriously, especially now, because I don't think I really took it seriously enough at the start, and now I've learned that it can really mess up anyone, even if you're healthy and young and fit. It's terrifying when doctors don't know what to do with you, and when you don't know all of the possible long-term side effects. Like when I thought I was going to have a heart attack every night, for all I knew that could be just another symptom of long COVID. And for all the doctors knew, they treat every patient that comes into A&E with something like that as if, they don't know what symptoms could kill who. And I've never experienced feeling as physically helpless as I've felt the last couple of weeks. And for me, the aftermath has actually been worse than the initial virus and infection. I'm almost into my 4th month now, and I know there's people out there who are experiencing all of these symptoms over a year on, and I don't think people that aren't going through it can understand the toll that it's taking on people with long COVID, because because having like good mental health depends so much on your body's health and on feeling like you're capable and strong. And I challenge anyone to only be capable of lying in bed day after day for months, and to be able to stay positive and not start feeling really depressed. I'm finding that even talking to people, even a conversation or a phone call or just messaging someone is exhausting, and I really want to communicate with people because obviously it's lockdown and I miss my friends, and I want to be able to see them and talk to them and have a nice time with them. But it really feels like this level of fatigue and feeling ill for this length of time, it starts to feel like it's just sapping your personality out of you. Like, the things that I like about myself and how I am in a social situation, I'm not capable of being at the moment. And I don't know if that's going to come back or how long it's going to take to come back. I don't feel fun to be around, and I don't feel like I can have fun being around people if after 5 minutes I'm absolutely exhausted. Obviously we're in a lockdown and I'm not seeing people anyway, but it's just, you know, if you can go 3 months improving and then just go back to square one like that, I don't feel like there's a guarantee that when lockdown is over I'm going to be better, because it seems like the smallest thing can just set me back to the beginning and where I was. Some people are in a lot worse positions than me, but yeah, like, maybe think about complaining about lockdown if you're speaking to someone with long COVID, because there's nothing to distract ourselves. We just have to lie in bed and wait to potentially feel better at some point, but also maybe not. Sorry, that was a bit depressing, wasn't it? It was at this point that I also started having issues with my heart. I'd had issues with breathing and stuff before, which had scared me, but particularly at night I started getting palpitations and flutters, along with chest pain, which was terrifying because I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I was going to have a heart attack. I spoke to a GP about it. He told me to come back in a week if I still felt bad, which, you know, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, so I wasn't going to do that. I called 111 and they were great. Put me on the phone to a doctor. I was speaking to one, it only took like 20 minutes for a doctor to call me back, and the doctor was immediately like, right, you need to go to A&E now. I also find it quite worrying that you can have a GP be that dismissive and then speak to another GP and they think you need to go to A&E straight away when you've told them exactly the same thing. There wasn't any permanent damage, thank God, but I was having like irregular heartbeats and stuff like that, and you know, they've kind of said there's people coming in with long COVID with symptoms like that a lot, and they can't really help you. They don't really know what to say. But the fact that I knew I wasn't going to have a heart attack made me feel a lot better, because, you know, the anxiety of that definitely also fucks with your heart. One other symptom that I've actually been having recently is I sprained my knee like 2 years ago, and suddenly it's really started hurting again, but I haven't been exercising because I can't. I've just been lying in bed, and I was really confused as to why suddenly it felt like my knee is sprained again. And it turns out, doing some research, that joint pain and inflammation in your joints is also a symptom. Because it's new, doctors aren't able to recommend much that can help, because obviously everything's still being tested. But in some of these support groups, they do give some advice on stuff that people have found to be helpful. So some stuff that I've picked up on is, don't exercise, just don't, like, a tiny walk and some stuff to keep you mobile, if you can manage it, is okay, but just wait to be better before you do that, because you will just keep sending your recovery back. The thing is vitamins. I know there's been a lot of talk about vitamin D. I think some of the talk about that is a little bit dangerous when people say that it can prevent it and stuff like that. I'm not sure about that, but well, I am sure about that. It won't prevent it. Some things that I've bought to help are, I'm just going to get them so that I'm not making it up. This is my ridiculous amount of stuff. Vitamin D, it's really strong. You probably don't need it this strong, but they did actually find when I went into hospital for my heart, you did a bunch of blood tests and found that I was deficient in vitamin D. So I'm just trying to get as much of that into my body as possible. Iron, because I have no energy, and I think iron's supposed to give you energy. This is really not, I mean, obviously you can tell I'm not a doctor, but this is just what I've heard and I'm just desperate, so I'm trying everything. Quercetin, also apparently people have had some positive results from that. It might all be placebo effects, but at this point I will do literally anything. Just a multivitamin. These are the B complex ones. Biotin. Biotin is meant to be good for inflammation around your heart, which is what I was really scared about. And B12 and stuff like that. It's good to get a B complex thing, because I think having some of them with the others help them all absorb better. I have actually done research on this and it did make sense, which is why I bought them. But I know that when I explain it, it seems like I don't know anything about anything. But I do, it's hard. This I got because it's D-mannose. It's supposed to be really good to prevent UTIs in women, so if you tend to get UTIs, this is good to have anyway. But particularly if you've got long COVID, I think that it really knocks your immune system to get any other kind of virus and infection, so it makes it extra important to try and prevent that to help your recovery. Finally, I bought some 5-HTP. This is a herbal supplement that actually is supposed to aid in your serotonin production. A lot of people that have experienced long COVID end up with really low serotonin and they end up really depressed and anxious, and personally for me, I don't feel like I want to try taking antidepressants or anything. A herbal supplement that might boost it a little bit is a bit more appealing to me personally.